to anyone who's visiting from home on the internet. The UU Fellowship of Lake Norman is an open and inclusive congregation. Our members walk diverse paths to find meaning and purpose, but we are united in our belief in the inherent worth and dignity of all, and by our responsibility to express our faith through acts of justice and compassion. My name is Jim Price, and I've been an active member of this congregation since 2019, and I've been a Unitarian since 2012. Today, our visiting speaker, the Reverend Nathan King's title is Asked to Dance, and he asked, what does inclusivity look like in the current context? That's going to be interesting. And we hope. A little bit about Reverend King. Nathan King has been pastor at Trinity UCC in Concord, North Carolina since January of 2001, and has led Trinity in becoming a social action, social justice church. And that's where I had heard of him from, about him. He was a plaintiff in the UCC versus Cooper case that brought marriage equality to North Carolina. Kudos for that. Nathan received his Master of Divinity with a religious education degree from Southeastern Seminary in 1990. He served churches as minister with youth and children for 10 years before being ordained in the United Church of Christ in 1993. He has been pastoral ministry for 32 years, and for the past 5 years, Nathan is an archer. He shoots an Olympic recurve bow in target archery competitions and regularly misses the mark. That's what he said, but I'm not sure if that's true if you listen to the next sentence. He is current state indoor champion for USA Archery in the 60-plus age range, and he is the state senior games champion for the 60 to 64 age division for the past 2 years. So we'll have to talk about that. He is married to the lovely Theresa Woody, a fabulous pianist who has been to more archery competitions than she ever imagined. That's his words. They're faithful parents to their 6.5-year-old Yorkie, Sona. And now we'll have our child slide. Let's see if I can do this. It's all in the wrist game.
Oh, yeah. Good job.
Please say with me the chalice life works in the order of service.
We like this chalice to illuminate this world's street. In our search for truth, may we be just. In our search for justice, may we be human. And in loving, may we find peace.
And now I invite Reverend King to offer words to open our service. Reverend King.
Thank you, Jim. I will give you those opening words in a moment, but I do want to say how honored I am to be here. Incidentally, regularly missing the mark, and the Greek is actually the definition for sin, by the way. So you aim the arrow, the bow, the arrow, and you don't hit where you're aiming. It almost feels like homecoming to me to be here today. Theresa and I both were part of the actual organizational meeting for this fellowship back in 2007 down at the Davidson Public Library. And
the very first meeting.
And of course, Theresa has played music here more than a few times. And I've accompanied her sometimes when we've had fellowship and outings. And some of you have been in our house when I was there. Some of the other 10 I see around here. And they were meeting in the Quaker Meeting House really brings this full circle for me because I grew up going to a friend's meeting house for vacation Bible school, the same congregation which my best friend Jay Marshall pastored while we were in seminary, and then that I went to serve as supply preacher after he left there. And so the friends were the ones who kept saying, yes, you can be a minister. You can be a minister. Even though some difficult things happened in my life. And so I'm really honored to be here. So thank you for having me. I understand that probably Sue Cunningham was the person who attends Trinity and also comes here as well, that gave you my name. So, if you have any problem with anything I say, you can see Sue. Told me that they were going to be at either place today. So, hear these opening words. Angel Kyoto Williams Sensei says, inclusivity is not how do we make you a part of what we are, but how do we become more of what you are?
Mm-hmm.
Several years ago, I was honored to be invited and included in a summer solstice celebration. It was in North Carolina, over near the Tennessee line, in a national park. And I say I was honored because this was a group of about 150 Cherokee people, and those that they had come to trust enough to invite for a week-long fast, camping, and summer solstice celebration. And a white friend of mine who had been to the celebration a number of years with them invited me after he had invited me to his home with a couple of the organizers of the summer solstice. And we sat around the table together. And Kay Littlejohn and Danny BK were their names. They were the organizers of the summer solstice celebration. So I took him up on his invitation, and I got to the summer solstice celebration, and I quickly realized that not only was Kay one of the organizers, she was also the ritual leader. So anytime we were gathered together in this big field with the fire in the middle and we were doing ritual around the fire, she was the one leading that. While I was there, I was invited to sit with others in a sweat lodge. Mm-hmm. That was unfamiliar to me then. It isn't now. I was invited to participate in the ritual calling of the spirit and trying to be sure not to cross over the spirit paths. Clumsily, I participated in the sweat lodge with the first peoples. I hadn't intended to interrupt the spirit path, but I didn't understand the instructions, and yet they still welcomed me into that ritual, even giving me the responsibility of tossing in the tobacco offering into the fire inside the sweat lodge. I don't know if you've ever been in a sweat tent or not, but it's this big structure, it's a tent, and then with wet quilts on top of it, laid all over it to create moisture. And then there's a big fire hole in the very middle of the ground. And so periodically through the sweat, stones that are red hot are brought into that pit to increase the heat and increase the moisture. Of course, the humidity gets pretty hot in there. And quite often people have visions in sweat. But I was invited to take the tobacco because each time stones are brought in, you make offerings into the stones. And we did. Being invited into someone's space, someone's life, someone's deeply held transformational ritual space, even like this, and I feel that way now with you, is a weighty honor. My memory is of this group that it was a diverse group, mostly Cherokee, but also white and Two-Spirit people, young and old, women, children, short, tall, medium sizes, pagan, Christian, atheist, pan, with all identities honored. I don't remember another time in my life when I was invited and so fully included and welcomed by 147 strangers. We're now in an era that eschews such diversity and inclusion as that. We're now in an era in which the message of churches like this, as well as the one that I pastor in Concord, are being attacked, and in which anyone not like immoral, unethical, selfish, power-hungry white men are being pushed aside, pushed over, pushed down, and pushed out of any place of power and leadership. Long-held rights of a diverse population of people are being stripped away. In our society, rather, our so-called leadership seems to have bought the lie that might makes right, and that leadership is the exclusive right and privilege of billionaires. I find myself thinking with my church in Concord, I find myself wondering about you here at the UU of Lake Norman. What on earth can we do to change what is happening to the rule of law with this gross collection and concentration of wealth and power in our country as citizens and as people of faith? And I go back and forth on this. On the one hand, nothing I do or say seems or feels like it has very much power to bring about change or make much difference, and it feels hopeless. I really like the words you gave, Senator, about from Pavlovitz, about taking a moment, going outside, recognizing the beauty around us, breathing, turning off the news for at least a few minutes. And yet on the other extreme, I strongly consider being a lawbreaker in order to bring about the change that we see. So as we reflect together on the practice of inclusion today, I wonder what the practice of inclusion might have to say about how we navigate and transform the current socio-political malaise in which we now find ourselves. And what I find is that in a world of exclusivity, in a world of exclusive executive leadership, inclusion is resistance. Inclusion is being faithful to what I value and what you value in your principles as a congregation. People like you and me have been seeking to include others not like us for ages, or at least the past couple of decades. Right? As people of progressive and liberal faith, such inclusivity is not only part of our spiritual DNA, it's also the right action for this time in our world. That diversity and equity and inclusion is, I guess now, and will become unlawful to do, raises the stakes and makes the risks higher for congregations like yours. But to do otherwise isn't an option for us. To do otherwise is to concede what is right and what is good and what is loving. It isn't an option for us to exclude others because it's who we are, it's who you are. I know enough about you, UUAs, because my sister is a UU minister, my brother-in-law is a UU minister, and I feel as much UU myself as I do Christian, to tell you the truth. Inclusive is who you are. But I wonder when I hear the words of Angel Kyoto Sensei saying, inclusion is how do we become more of what you are? I wonder, how inclusive are we? Can we be more inclusive? What would that look like? What would that mean for us? You have, my church in Concord has done a pretty good job of making others part of who we are. But become more of what others are, those on the margins are. That's a different mindset. It requires a different mindset than what we've normally had in any church, Christian or UU or otherwise, liberal or whatever. So if we were to dance with this saying for just a minute, hold it, look it in the eyes, move with it, we might notice some of inclusion's subtleties. We can invite people into our church. We have at the church I pastor, and I know you have here. Usually what we do there is then we give them, at some point we'll invite them into an orientation about who we are. We'll give them a constitution so they'll know how we sort of do things. And then we'll invite them to be on a board or leadership or on a team or a committee or something. We might even invite them into our homes for a meal and invite them to join us in our ministries. And they might fit in. But how are we changed by their presence? How do we become different than who we are by the presence of those we've yet to meet who will come in these doors? They too have ideas and ways of expressing faith and being courageous. They have things to teach us. So I was interested to read. Anybody watch the Super Bowl on Sunday? No. I didn't watch this. I haven't watched about that much NFL football since Colin Kaepernick took a knee and lost his job. But I was interested to read on social media Sunday, just after halftime, and Monday morning, how predominantly people that look like me, do you need me to interpret that for you? White male, heterosexual, how people thought the Super Bowl halftime was the most boring ever. And I know they were old enough to remember 1991 and the New Kids on the Block halftime show. It couldn't have been the most boring ever. But I didn't watch the Super Bowl nor the halftime show, not live anyway. But one look at the images I saw later from the halftime show. And it brought a big smile on my face. To see the American flag there on that stage represented exclusively by Black people.
Yes, that's what it is.
It was not lost on me. And Uncle Samuel Jackson.
Yes.
Decked out in the unmistakable red, white, and blue tuxedo and top hats of Uncle Sam. Who we are. who this country is. And of course, when I saw Serena Williams dancing that dance, the one she got in trouble for at Wimbledon, and I thought, you can remove end racism from your end zones in NFL if you want to, but you cannot stop the beautiful, creative, subversive, resistant messaging of Black artists, athletes, and change makers. And I have to note that all that takes courage that I do not have never had to have, and likely will never have to do that on that stage. We have a lot we can learn from artists who don't look like us. Well, even though I'm an intense introvert, it didn't take a lot of courage for me. I've never had to have a lot of courage. And a lot of that's because of what I look like. It didn't take a lot of courage for me to go to a summer solstice celebration with Native American people many years ago. After the sweat lodge, I went to my tent, I went to sleep, I got up the next morning, I drank black coffee with everybody else, or tea, or water. We were fasting after all. And then the whole gathering gathered together in the field where the fire was kept and around which the stories were told. The youth had gone up into the woods for their vision quest, and there were reports that bears were in the area. So I remember Kay and Little John leading us in the whole gathering in a chant with movement around the circle, around the fire. And the chant was about getting bear to stay away and to be kind. And I was on the margins of that big circle. Mostly it was women and children and a few of the young men in the circle. But as it came around, as we chanted, more and more folks joined in. And I was still on the margins because I was a stranger. And about the third or fourth time around, and I was trying to not be noticed, Kay, Little John, looked at me directly as she was dancing and leading the group around the circle, and she just went. And so, of course, I did. I didn't hesitate. I got up and joined the circle. I danced the dance. I sang the chant. Reverend Marta Valentin says, step into the center. Come in from the margins. Tell us we are one. We moved as one around that circle. And Verna Meyer says, diversity is being invited to the party. Inclusion is being asked to dance. But I, in my hetero white male self, am not the one that needs to be included. It's the ones on the margins. And they need to be included, not to do things how we want to do things, but to do things how things need to be done in order for change to happen, and happen well for them. Mine is not the voice that needs hearing and heeding right now. It's the people on the stage at the Super Bowl halftime show. It's the LGBTQIA individuals in our families, in our lives, in our churches, in our communities, particularly the trans individuals, whose voices need to be heard and whose selves need to be honored right now. The voices of the lived experience of the poor need to be included and heeded right now. The outcast, the excluded, the hungry, the imprisoned must come in from the margins and be centered in our society in order for us to be healed and find who it is we really are as human beings all created in the image of love. The work has not changed just because exclusivity currently seems to reign. We must be changed by them, because it is in the leadership of those on the margins that we find our wholeness and healing and who we really are as good human beings. My sister Alice tells a story of her friend and Episcopal colleague. My sister Alice, the UUA minister at Loudon UU in Virginia, was some years ago in San Diego, and she was the minister with young adults in campus ministries at UU San Diego. And while there, she made a friend named Mike Angel, who was an Episcopal minister, who was also on campus at San Diego State University. He helped her get oriented to what she needed to have in order to have credentials for going on campus at San Diego State University. And now they both are on the East Coast. She is in Loudon, and he in DC at St. John's Church near White, St. John's Episcopal. While there, he built a relationship with a homeless man who hung out near the church building. And this man, Mac, said to Mike one day, "The poor will be with you always." And with this, of course, Mike stopped to listen because he knew where that line comes from. Jesus said that. The poor will be with you always, Max said. And then he said, "But Mike, people got it wrong. It's a question. Are the poor with you? Are they with you? Do you include the voice of the poor when you're voting? Are the poor with you? Are they in your mind when you go about what you do during the day? Are they with you when you're in the boardroom or the city council meeting or the community gathering? Are they in your heart? Are they with you?" We could ask this question of anyone on the margins who would be on target for how we can be more inclusive. Are they with you when you leave this space? That is one thing we could do that would effectively counter the exclusivism that seems to reign. Is just carry people with us in our minds and in our hearts, in our conversations that we have with family members and others in our community. It's one way we can faithfully practice that sort of inclusion. It isn't much. It isn't going to change things overnight, but it will change us, and we'll become more a part of who those on the margins are. So my question for us today is, what might we do beyond that would say or symbolize in as unmistakable ways as a Super Bowl halftime show? To the poor, to the outcast, the immigrant, the hungry, the oppressed, that you belong in our hearts and lives and country and world. And we must learn from you how to be courageous in this time. What can we do with that? Blessed be you.
Amen.
Okay, Reverend Nathan, we have a talk back, so.
Well, no, I didn't sign up for that. We don't do that.
I'd like to start, I'll share something. It was in 2012, President Obama was running for re-election, and Franklin Graham was on Meet the Press. And this was before I became a Unitarian. But I was almost outraged at his presentation that day, because And I wrote a letter to the Observer, which was printed, by the way, and I complained that he had an opportunity to talk about the inclusivity of Christianity. That should have, to me, that should have been his primary message. He had a large audience. But let me tell you what he talked about that day. He talked about President Obama's demon seed. That's what he called it, because his father was a Muslim. He said he had a demon seed from which he could never escape. And I was just appalled. And interestingly, that's the year I joined the Unitarian Church. I've been a Baptist all my life. I joined the Unitarian Church. I couldn't get with that.
I'll just stand here. I'd like to know what it was you did that blocked the passage of the Spirit into that tent. Is that something you can tell? I don't know the answer to this, Tom.
Well,
I'm curious.
This is the question. My memory is, and this is, well, it was really embarrassing to me, because my memory is we were standing here, the sweat lodge was like over here, and yellow horseman who was leading us was calling the Spirit, and there were two paths, and I'm not sure what those two, one was the Spirit path, and the other was something else. And you were not supposed to interrupt that as you were going in. And for some reason, I lost consciousness for a moment. I don't know. But I remember being on this side of him. And then when I went to do something, I went this way, right directly across the Spirit path. And he was like, oh.
Yeah.
But they still, they sort of let it slide. The Spirit. On that note, the Spirit is definitely there. I'll tell you why. If you will indulge me for a minute, you don't have to. Sure. No problem. So when these stones are brought in, somebody from outside who's not participating in the sweat brings these. They're in a fire over here outside the tent, and it is all the coals are just glowing hot. You have to use a particular kind of stone, otherwise they would explode under this intense heat. And someone brings these in with a pitchfork. So you got the stone on top of the pitchfork, and they bring them in, and they lower them down into the ground where the pit is that the stones are lowered into. And then you throw in whatever offerings you have. And I was a little anxious to get the tobacco thrown in. As the guy was bringing the pitchfork out, I thought he was just going to put the stone in and bring it out. He thought he needed to adjust it a little bit, so my hand met the pitchfork on its way to adjust it. Now the pitchfork was glowing red hot too. One of the tines on it came, I think it was this hand, came right across my fingers. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is burned. And I didn't know what to do. So the ground was wet, it was cool, this was at night. I put my hand down on the ground like that, with the wounded, burnt part down on the ground. And I thought, I don't know if this will do any good. This is the earth. Okay. And I sat there. It was dark. We couldn't use flashlights for this. We didn't use flashlights going back to our tent after the sweat. I got back to, this is pitch black on. I can't see my hand. I have no idea what it looks like until the next morning. And I wake up and it looks just like it does. There was no wound on it. People have said, oh, well, I don't know. I can't explain it. I guess that's the definition of a miracle. But it happened. And to me, there was something there that was more powerful than I am, for sure.
It is telltale that they were so welcoming to you, even though you interrupted the Spirit.
Yeah.
Come up, Kat.
So this is bringing back, I don't want to, I'm there, aren't I? Okay. A lot of memories for me, because as a youth, I was a troubled youth, and so I was sent away a lot. And when I lived in New Hampshire, one of the places I got sent away to is we did sweat lodges with natives who lived very nearby or came from Canada or both, And as soon as you said you put your hand on the ground, I was like, oh, I remember when we get too hot, we would lay on the ground, even though you were right next to the fire. It was just like, if you felt like you couldn't breathe or something, it was just so hot, you just, it was, and I've been to, quite a few different, Native celebrations, and I don't know, I just wanted to tell you that it's just bringing back lots of good memories, and also slightly traumatic, but yeah.
But the sweat itself.
Yes, amazing, and I wouldn't have had that opportunity like otherwise, so it was really neat. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. Well, when you talked about the Super Bowl halftime, my heart was like, oh, this is so cool. Everybody on that stage is black. And Uncle Sam is black, and the white and the red and the blue uniforms dividing and then coming back and uniting. It was very symbolic to me. And then to see that there was so much turmoil the next day, so much commentary on it. And apparently, too, the words of the song that Kendrick was speaking were muted. And a lot of his words were speaking to the president. A lot of them were speaking, describing his awful acts of cruelty. And then you think about, and I also heard that it cost $15 million to bring a president to a Super Bowl. And in the meantime, in that same, 24-hour time period, he has someone like chopping, money from, children cancer research dollars, it's like, and then people are complaining about Americans, Black Americans on a stage, and it's like, really? Wow. So I loved it. I thought it was very powerful for me because it is part of like, sure, show your stuff, be out there, why not? I enjoy this, and it was very symbolic for me. So I'm glad you brought it up because it kind of bothered me, the reaction of this.
Anyone else? Okay. Okay. Thank you.
This is called Standing on the Side of Love.
Oh, no.
Fellowship is in important to us all. The contributions we make today allow us to sustain and grow our congregation, our young congregation. We're less than 20 years old. And that helps us to reach out to the community, both nearby and in the larger world. Your giving affirms our commitment to each other and to the community. With grateful hearts, we receive these gifts. May they encourage us to live lives of integrity, compassion, and peace. There are some announcements from the order of service. We have social suppers after the service. Everybody's invited. Today, the group is meeting at McAllister's. Correct? Okay. Tell Linda if you plan to go so she can call it in. Movie Tuesdays. Several people meet to go to the movies at the Regal. They have special pricing on Tuesdays. The movie this week is Captain America. Okay, and the starting time is noon. Again, you might tell them. Heart of the Carolinas UU Animal Ministry will have a dog fest field next Saturday, the 22nd at 9 a.m. It's on Glen Street. We've already built on that street twice, so this is good. Feed and Seed, the next time they're going to work is March the 13th, and helping to feed the homeless. Let's see. Okay, next week we begin the children's, having a children's service. We've been without that for quite a while, and so that's something to look forward to. And also, that's March 2nd, I'm sorry. And then on March 2nd, also the Humanists of Lake Norman that's been has been for quite a while now. And now we have a closing song, number 155, Circle Around for Freedom. 155.
For those of you who want to see the notes, it's the middle line of this melody, not the top line, not the bottom line, the line that's in the middle, just the main melody.
Any closing words, Reverend King?
I don't have a lot of closing words. I will say that I've been changed by you. Not just today, but in times past, with Larry and Gina at their house. At our house, some of you in times past, thank you for the way you changed my life. Go forth, finding ways to let others change your life. Amen.
Amen.
It was good to learn that you were part of the service or the meeting that established our meeting. In 2007, Judge Theresa, that's very good to know. And as I mentioned earlier, that means we're a pretty young congregation. So we're doing pretty well, thank goodness. So I'm glad of that. Okay, we're going to extinguish the chalice now, and we'll say the chalice. Extinguish the words in the order of service.
They're good action.
We extinguish the chalice
Or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts till we meet again.
It's been a good service. Thank you all for being here. Thank you, Reverend.
Namaste.
And thank all of you that have.
Absolutely.
We used to have a choir almost 10 years ago. It was we had practice at Teresa's house.
At Teresa's house?
One day he walked by the hallway. And I said, Teresa, who was that man?